All around me are familiar faces, wearing gimp masks, setting weird traps, and facing large bats. And I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad that people could watch this movie and ever call it bad. I find it hard to tell you there's no nipples on his suit, but my goodness, Robert Pattinson sure does know how to brood. When that signal hits the sky, it's a very, very bat world. KG, hit our music.
For the record, so everybody knows, we are on a new podcast feed. We are on a new Sweaty Dive specifically podcast feed. We are also on YouTube. Search for us on all platforms except for maybe Apple Podcasts. Right now, getting an Apple Podcast feed is a little bit tricky, but we will definitely be on like Spotify, all the other podcast apps, and again on YouTube. So make sure you search for us. The next couple podcasts are going to still be on the Geeks Weekly feed as well as the Sweaty Dive podcast feeds. But by the time summer rolls around, we are looking to only be on the Sweaty Dive feed.
Welcome to the Sweaty Dive podcast. I am one half of your hosts, Buffcharmander, joined as always by my good pal, KG.
Yep.
KG, we're here to discuss and I'm saying the Batman. The Batman directed by Matt Reeve, starring Robert Pattinson. Yes, that's right. It feels like the 100th guy in a Batman movie who was cast that we are now, as a public, going, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know. Meanwhile, anyone who's ever watched this person act knows, no, it'll be fine. And KG, you're the big Batman guy. I want to know where your head was at. But before we even start with like any thoughts on the film, there was a large amount of hype I saw from a lot of Batman fans online. Where was your hype level at?
I would say first trailer, which dropped DC fandom, it was through the roof. That needle drop with Something in the Way by Nirvana. The way that the WB sign started to spin as Riddler was undoing his duct tape. I just had a lot of questions. I was really excited. I saw one other trailer. Obviously, COVID pushed all the release dates and everything. So I guess the second new trailer that they dropped around 2021-ish, if I got my dates correct. I watched that trailer, and then after that, I said, no more. I'm going to go in as blind as I could be, and I'm very happy with myself. I didn't see any new footage. I saw no interviews. I accidentally saw one IGN 10 out of 10 review, but I didn't read it. I just saw perfect, which I assumed it would be high rated anyway. But my hype was unreal for this film. And without going too far, I'm just going to say it definitely delivered.
Yeah, it was so like judging hype levels on some of these movies online is kind of hard to do nowadays. It feels like a lot of things are really overhyped to the point where I think sometimes it can get a little bit difficult for a movie to succeed fully. And I think this movie might be falling prey to that just a little bit, although I mean, we talked about Spider-Man No Way Home a couple months ago. Do you think the hype for that movie surpassed the hype for this one? I would say yeah.
I would say yes, because they're two entirely different movies. I said before in our group chat there of nerds, I think they're two non-comparable films. I think one is like cinema, one is like a film's film, and then one is top tier echelon tentpole comic book film. And Spider-Man's hype is way different than Batman's because it's a culmination of 20 plus years of nostalgia, like you mentioned, and it delivered. If it didn't, like, it would have been a massive. I think if Spider-Man underdelivered more than the Batman underdelivered, it would have been way worse, because it had that 20 years of buildup.
100%. I think, yeah, and I mean, there were leaks, like big leaks going into the Spider-Man movie. Not a lot really leaked with this film, aside from something we'll get into. And by the way, this is a good time for me to mention, if you have not watched this movie yet, pause this podcast because we go full spoiler territory on this pod. We will talk literally any detail we want. So if you either you're okay with spoilers or you have seen this movie already, then buckle in. If not, go watch the film, come back and give us a listen. Aside from now that I've said that, we can mention it. Aside from the Joker cameo at the end of the film, nothing really leaked. People knew that this was going to be a detective film, but that's kind of it. I had no idea what was happening with anything. I didn't know that there was going to be multiple people in Riddler costumes at one point. I just knew we have Batman, Catwoman, Penguin, and the Riddler. And then, of course, I found out through the leaks that we were getting Joker. But that's kind of it. No real major stuff. And there's a couple of scenes shot outdoors in this movie. So it's pretty impressive that nothing got leaked, even though Spider-Man got leaked, even though that was filmed in front of like a blue screen. Like, how does that happen?
I guess people in the Marvel sets are just really antsy to take photos and send them. But I was mentioning to you in our group after we watched the film, the first trailer was literally only like the first 20 to 25 minutes of the film, which I'm a personal fan of. And I hope that all studios going forward just make that trailer and ideally don't make another one. I understand that for business, you have to make more and you have to entice. And people are very like now culture, which just I detest because it ruins the excitement of the actual film. I heard that if you watch later trailers, I don't know, you saw the latest Batman trailer?
I saw every single trailer.
All right. So do you think then that the later trailers kind of gave away more or too much or set up things that you kind of just wish you saw in the movie without seeing it in the trailer? Because just seeing the first trailer and like that pseudo kind of redone first kind of new trailer, I was pleasantly surprised with mostly everything I saw because I don't feel as though the trailers gave away too much. But if I watch the last one, I don't know. I still today have not watched that trailer.
I think that they show moments from the end of the movie, but no plot points are really given away. There's one thing. So I had predicted prior to us watching the film, and I didn't say this to you until after we watched. I had predicted that we would be getting sort of like a pseudo Batman Telltale Games storyline with the Waynes. And those games, for those of you who don't know, spoilers, the Waynes have like mob ties in those films. I mean, in those games. And there's a trailer for The Batman in which Bruce very evidently tells Alfred, "You lied to me." So instantly my mind was like, oh, it's about his parents. It has to be. And it was, but not to that degree, really. So that's like the only plot point that I would say got spoiled, really, in the trailers. And I guess there might have been a trailer in which you saw the picture of young Riddler. There might have been one. In which case, I guess you can consider that a spoiler. So, but for me, I just had no idea where the movie was going throughout, so it wasn't bad for my end. But you mentioned that you didn't watch any of the trailers. How was it now looking back as an experience? Because, I mean, you're a pretty big cinephile. Was it a bothersome experience having to remove yourself from all trailers and removing yourself from promotional material? And was it worth all that for a satisfying watch?
For the first part, like you were mentioning before, there wasn't as many leaks that I noticed. And that Joker leak that came out, I thought it was fake because it was so early. And I kind of just brushed it off. Like it was a terrible edit photo of the kid who plays him next to like a Joker that looks nothing like him with text over it. Like, yeah, he's playing Joker or whatever. So it's like, whatever, who knows? It could happen. I don't really know. But there wasn't like secret characters that I anticipated or anything. And I would say that after the movie, like when I was done, I was so happy I didn't see anything else. It was hard. When the new trailers dropped and you guys would talk about it, I did appreciate that you made new side chats to talk about it. But I kind of want to do this for all movies going forward that I have any interest in. It's definitely hard, but I think it pays off if you're into that specific film and you have a specific hype. Like Bullet Train, for example, the new Brad Pitt movie that's coming out looks amazing, super fun. I'll watch every single trailer. I don't care. I'm not going into that film where like I need to know I want something secret, or I don't want to know if secret characters come out because there's not like a lineage to it. It's just kind of like a set story. But for something like the Batman or Multiverse of Madness, like I watched the first trailer, I watched breakdowns of that trailer, I watched breakdowns of the breakdowns, but I honestly don't want to see any more. I've gotten enough where I'm excited and I'm going to do my best to avoid it. But I just feel like with Marvel versus DC, at least for now, especially with all the multiverse exploding, avoiding Marvel spoilers will like inevitably be harder than avoiding DC spoilers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that that's the case, right? I mean, People usually credit Marvel for keeping a lot of things under lock and key, but it seems like over the past couple years, it's kind of maybe they've loosened up a little bit post Endgame because that was
somebody made copies of those keys.
Yeah, it's looking a little bit less. And that picture of Andrew Garfield, by the way, on the Spider-Man set is an HD photo. That's like really clear cut. So that means someone in the editing room got the screenshot and sent it out to the boys in the group chat.
That's what I
Somebody
think.
lost their job.
Man, we never got reports about that, but I do wonder what, like, because, you know, Kevin Feige's cracking down on that type of stuff. He was probably so tight.
If I'm Kevin Feige, I'm firing that kid. Man, child, whatever, you're fired.
So now, I mean, KG, we've gone like 10 minutes without talking about the film, and I'm chomping at the bits to talk about it. And just so everyone knows, KG and I, aside from going, did you like it? Yeah. Did you like it? Yeah. We haven't really talked about this movie at all.
No, it's been hard. I got thoughts.
48 hours later, we're finally getting able to take a sweaty dive into the Batman. So Matt Reeves' Batman. KG, overall thoughts. Give them to me.
This is not your father's Batman. That is the first. I had to text myself that to remind myself to say it 48 hours later. But goddamn, this is not your father's Batman. I want all people listening, if you've seen it, I want you to think on it, and I want you to take it as more of a detective noir than it as like a straight up comic book thriller type film. The beginning was fucking beautiful. I can't say it any other way. Like, if that was a 10-minute mini movie, I was blown away. The way that you get the Riddler just stalking his prey. I personally love the way that the Riddler was shown in this film. I want to hear your thoughts after my mini tangent here. But then to go into Batman's journaling, which was very, to me, Rorschach heavy from The Watchmen, and also Seven, which I'm not going to spoil for you. You must watch it. That is your homework. But Morgan Freeman has a lot of voiceover in that film, and it borrows heavy elements from both Seven, to me, and Zodiac as well. And when the criminals see the symbol, and then they see the shadows, and well, at first I was like, maybe Pattinson's there, but when you realize that he's not even there, and these criminals are getting that scared, this is like the darkest interpretation in terms of cinema. This kind of makes Christopher Nolan's movies like fluffy. And I never thought I would say that. It was amazing. I want to know your thoughts.
So, man, I mean, when I left the theater after watching the film, I thought to myself, that might be unlike any superhero movie, live action, of course, that I've ever seen, for multiple reasons. I want to ask you this question. I guess I'll ask you after giving my thoughts. I'm not sure if it feels like a blockbuster even. And it's a Batman movie that cost $200 million. And it still doesn't really feel like a big time blockbuster movie. It just feels like, and I'm going to bring this up even though I find it cringe when some people do. Do you remember the Martin Scorsese quotes about...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
About the Marvel movies not feeling like cinema. I gotta be honest. When I walked out of this movie, I went, the GOAT might have been right. I get what he was saying when you look at the elaborated quotes after in the Times.
Text is key. Context is key.
Where he talks about what cinema means to him. This movie kind of had that. It captured that a little bit. And you can say, yeah, but it's borrowing from other movies and stuff. Sure. But they still brought that stuff into a different subgenre. We've been talking about it for years. All of our friends at this point. We all want to see... We've seen everything that the comic book movie can... As of Endgame, we've seen everything that comic book movies can do within the genre of big-time blockbusters. I would say, at least. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, yeah.
So why not take risks and spread your wings into other subgenres? You know, our good buddy, The Appetite Avatar, he's always talking to us about how he's reading these different comic book stories. And in comic books, each different issue and each character's stories have their own flavor, their own essence, their own aura and mythos about them. So why not bring that to the big screen? I think we can credit Logan for really kickstarting that in the recent timeline of films that we've had. And I think it passes the baton to the Batman in a really good way. Now, in saying that, I don't think the Batman is a movie for everyone. Do you?
Absolutely not. I would say first and foremost, don't bring kids. I would like I started with it's not your father's Batman. This is an interpretation that I believe we've never gotten before. This is borderline not even a comic book film. The Batman in this movie is pretty fucking deranged. He is out to hit people, to hunt as if it's like a game, you know, like a pseudo thrill. And he's not doing it so much. To me personally, I don't think he's doing it to help Gotham. I think he's doing it to help himself. And he doesn't realize till the end of the film that he needs to take what he's doing and magnify it times 10 and put it on. It's kind of like when they say in The Dark Knight, how's that quote go? You're the hero that they need, but not the hero they want right now, or something to that effect.
I'm not the hero. He's not the hero that we deserve. He's the hero that we need, though.
Yeah. So in sort of thinking like that, it's like Pattinson is doing this to me as like a therapeutic experiment. Like he's not going to talk to somebody about his feelings. He's just going to beat the shit out of people, crack some skulls, do whatever. But by the end of the film, he realizes the impact he has, and it can be super negative or super positive. So I think one of the most powerful shots is when he helps the woman onto the stretcher at the very end, and he holds her hand, for like 2 to 3 extra seconds, and he gives her a nod of comfort, like we're gonna get through this, you know. And it's important that scene is done as the sun rises and the moon is going away, so he's coming like out of the shadows. And the Riddler's a straight ass serial killer. Like you could take the Batman away and title it something else, and like it would just be kind of like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo-esque, like someone who's tech savvy, can kind of handle himself in fights, are trying to find this deranged killer. And I love that aspect. It's very approachable from all angles. I think people who don't like comic book movies should definitely give this a shot, but people who love comic book movies should really temper expectations and maybe not watch a bunch of trailers, but try to understand like the vibe that you're going to get before you go in. So that way you can mentally prepare yourself for what you're going to take in.
That being said, I wanted to check out, like, how's this doing on Rotten Tomatoes audience score? Just for the record, it's sitting at an 85% on the tomato meter from critics, which is around it's expected. I think 2 out of the 3 Dark Knight movies were in the mid-80s as well. Its audience score is a 91%. Pleasantly surprised. I am, at least. Did you think, I would say... This is going to sound weird.
I thought the scores would be flipped.
Me too. But also, do you think that this movie was properly advertised?
The trailers to me seemed more combat. And even in the film, while I was watching it, I was like, I know that Reeve said he was going detective, but like this is really detective. And almost halfway through the movie, I had to readjust myself to be like, you're preparing your body for an adrenaline rush that it's probably not going to get. So eat a little more candy, sit tight, and make sure you're analyzing. And then it became one of those movies where I'm trying to answer the questions almost out loud as the movie's going. Like when he's guessing all the riddles, I wanted to guess them before him to try and put the puzzle pieces together. But yeah, I think the marketing almost could have hurt it, and I thought it would have hurt it more. Because to me, I thought it sold more of an action flick.
Yeah, I mean, even I thought, like, all right, we're getting a detective movie, but it looks kind of like it's just going to be awesome. And by awesome, I mean like this big fun. I have a comp here that I'm going to make later as well. I had a feeling going into this movie it was going to be more like Mad Max Fury Road in terms of... Mad Max Fury Road is a great film. Like, cinephiles love that movie. But it's a thrill ride and it's really fun. And I thought that, and not that I thought it was going to be like a pure action movie, but there was a lot of action shown in the trailers. And it seemed like it was just Batman going around beating on people. And I knew it was going to be a detective movie, but I was like, yeah, but I don't know. We're not really seeing any of the detective-y stuff in the trailers at all, which is good. But I thought that we were going to get more of the cool factor of Batman. Not the deep noir, 70s crime movie side of Batman. And I'm glad that we got it. But I just don't know that this movie was properly advertised. And I think that's why I'm seeing some people that I follow online feel a little bit underwhelmed by the movie. People thought they were going to get blown away. And I think some people are going, it was good. And I think people are doing a lot of comparisons. Are you seeing a lot of people go, well, it's not The Dark Knight, but...
I don't think I follow as many critics as you do. So I haven't seen that, but I also haven't seen like general public where they're always like Dark Knight's the best. I'm going to put this 5-second scene of whatever. I haven't seen anybody kind of ooh and ah and gush over it. And I am curious to see like my girlfriend and I were going to go soon again. I want for my second rewatch her first. And I'm very curious to see her interpretation of like his relationship with Catwoman, but just the film overall, because she's not like really big into comic book movies, but I want to see if this kind of, I want to see if she thinks this is a comic book movie or more of like a detective noir, like I kind of took it as. I think it's detective first, comic book second.
Yeah. And I would say, so we've had a lot of Batman movies, obviously, over the years, ever since, I mean, before 89 with the Adam West Batman film. This feels really fresh, though. And I listened to, for those of you who don't know this podcast, The Big Picture under the Ringer podcast umbrella, Sean Fennessy, who was the host of that podcast, interviewed Matt Reeves, and I listened to it. I listened to it yesterday. Great interview. And
Same here.
oh, and you remember the part where Reeves says, you know, I felt like I had to earn making this movie, like I had to give people a reason to want to see another new Batman. And I think he accomplishes that. He's trying really hard to separate this from other iterations of Batman. But I don't think it's for naught. I think it works, and it's just this totally... I mean, he injected life into a franchise that was already as popular as it could be without being like Spider-Man. Do you think that this movie kind of earns its keep in terms of, well, we didn't need a new Batman franchise, but dang, now we want one?
Oh, yeah. This is a strong departure from what DC was doing. And I know there was like, I saw like little tidbits of information like Reeves doesn't want a Superman in his film, or like people are asking, can they get a Superman? It's not going to work. I personally think it would never, ever work. This Gotham, it's even different than Joker. The feel is different. The vibe is different. The cobblestone roads were a huge standout. A lot of it's filmed in London, and like, yo, it rains does it rain every day there? Kind of feel bad. It's like Seattle on drugs. I'm a big like nice guy, cool breeze guy, but even I want a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of like, I don't need all that rain. But it's funny that you say he injects life, because this is the darkest interpretation that I've ever seen live action. But I think it's a thing of beauty, right? When you take it as it is, how it's made, the way it's crafted, the way it's stylized, how things are blurring on purpose. It looks like they use shit cameras, but they did that on purpose. Like when you see those small things, it really... And I'm a huge fan of what DC is doing right now, and I think they should just stick with it. I don't need a Superman in this. I don't even know if I need a Robin here, because just logistically, I'm trying to think. He's young, maybe in like year 6 or whatever, so maybe that would be the third film, but then what, like how far do you go with him? I just like, the way I wrote it was like this. This to me is a standalone graphic novel that I would highly recommend to a friend if they never read a Batman book and they're afraid to read comics, just like I am. Like, this is a perfect Batman story for me. I'm not going to read a lineage of issue 1 to 50, or I'm not going to read, I don't know, team of stories or whatever. But this to me is like The Dark Knight Rises, you know? It's a one-off. It's a beautifully constructed beginning, middle, end. And hopefully there's no shit sequel like there was to The Dark Knight Returns, just saying. But we just had to drop that there. But I think it's like a beautiful, captured, splashy graphic novel. You know what I mean?
Is this an event movie? In your opinion, at least.
It's not Spider-Man event movie. It's definitely not. Like, middle school kids won't appreciate this film. They're too young. They're either going to be bored. They're going to think like, where's all the action, right? Or they're going to leave with a lot of questions that it's pretty hard for an adult to answer. Like, well, this is why he had this following, and this is why he had riflemen up top, and this is what it's trying to say about like gun violence or whatever. Like, it's a very adult movie. So I'm super curious. And it comes out on HBO Max in a month. It comes out in April. I didn't realize that. So I'm like wildly curious how it's going to perform. I truly hope that it achieves It breaks through all of it makes it profits and beyond. But really only giving it 1 month in the theaters and having like a true target adult audience with a PG-13 rating, borderlining on R, the first 30 minutes of the movie, somebody drops the F-bomb. Like, I'm very curious how it's going to perform. I hope it exceeds everything, but I am curious how it's going to pan out dollars wise.
I think this is the first time I can remember in a theatrical release Batman cursing while wearing the costume. And I'm pretty sure he curses in this movie at one point, if not multiple points.
Yeah, he says GD.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, what? This is so different. And you're right. When that F-bomb got dropped, I had to think to myself, wait, is this movie rated R?
I clapped like a little bit of loser. I was like, this is great. Of course, they don't ever say it again because it's PG-13. You get 1 or 2, but I was like, this is what we're getting.
And I think that was, to me, that's Matt Reeves very early on in the screenplay buckling us in and saying, hey, just so you know, this is different. And I love different. I've been cramming. I've been wanting it for years. Speaking of different, his name is Vengeance in this movie. And that's not exaggerating. His name is Vengeance.
What did you think about that?
Oh, I wish I was going to ask you first. All right, so I think... So Matt Reeves has said, and I don't know... We're going to get a text from our boy Appetite Avatar about this, I'm sure, once this pod's out, telling us what the answer is. Reeves has said that that's in the comic books at some point. Like, there's a reference of him calling himself Vengeance. It's obviously in the... it's in the iconic Batman the Animated Series, although he still refers to himself as Batman in that.
I am Vengeance, I am the Night, I am Batman.
Yes. In this movie, no. He's known as Vengeance, even though he has the bat ears and the bat logo on him. He calls himself Vengeance to bad guys. Catwoman calls him Vengeance. I forget if it was Falcone or Penguin.
It might have been Penguin.
And Penguin calls him Vengeance. And by the time Penguin called him Vengeance, I was like, no, wait, hold on. This isn't just people joking. That's what he goes by. And I gotta be honest with you. It's kind of cool. I kind of liked it a little bit. I thought it was interesting. Especially when you look at the arc of the character towards the end of the film, where I think next movie, he's not going to be called... But if we get a next movie, knock on all the wood, I think he won't be referred to as Vengeance. I think that he will start referring to himself as Batman. So, first question to you, did you like it? And then I'll bounce my second question off you after that.
I didn't realize it was going to be like a running thing. And by the third person saying it, I started to love it because I realized that even though this isn't a Martha and Thomas get killed origin, this is him growing into the Batman. As of right now, he is just a masked vigilante taking justice into his own hands and selectively taking on cases that he deems like important. He says, I can't be everywhere. I have to be picky. In this Riddler situation, I think he's involved because it's like a mayor, but also like it's addressed to him and it becomes a cat and mouse game, you know, or I should say Bat and Riddler game because we do have a cat. But I was a fan and I agree with you that if we get a second one, which I hope it gets greenlit, I hope everything works, the Vengeance will drop and he may even like correct someone and be like, no, I'm Batman. It's like, oh,
because I want to hear him say I'm Batman. We haven't heard someone do that since...
So no one said it in the film at all.
No, he says it in the movie at one point. Towards the end, when they're in the Riddler's house, and Batman says, "I think I'm the one who's next," and then he says, "I think this is the end," and Gordon says, "The end of what?" And he says, "The end of the Batman." So,
you're right.
But my question. And this isn't a question necessarily to you, but this is me thinking out loud. So that means one of two things must have happened, right? Either the media was referring to him as the Batman, or the Riddler started referring to him as the Batman.
So you're saying that the Riddler could have possibly given him his name? Because there's a picture of the Batman sketch in his apartment. And I can't remember if it says Batman or who is the masked man.
Well, he writes on the note cards to the Batman.
Oh, he does. Yes, he does.
So that's either a media thing, or it's him, or it was the Riddler going, no, this guy has bat ears. That's obviously the Batman. And I mean, the choice to have him not refer to himself as Batman. So just, I was saying this before, up until Affleck, because he didn't do it, we had heard every Batman from Keaton to Bale say the line in some way, I'm Batman. Kilmer kind of riffs on it a little bit and gives more like a monologue when he says it. But everyone announces themselves as Batman. We didn't see that in Ben Affleck's Batman, which I wish we could have. That would have been cool, especially in his voice. And we didn't hear that this time around. But the choice to have him be called Vengeance is just one of the many examples in this movie of like a bold choice. And you mentioned you liked what Warner Brothers or DC was doing recently. And I couldn't agree more. I think, I believe we talked about this during our the Suicide Squad discussion. I love the idea of Warner Brothers just kind of getting these directors with really interesting voices and really interesting ideas and kind of just letting them do their own thing. I'm hoping we get that with Andy Muschietti in The Flash. I mean, It Chapter 2 isn't as good as It Chapter 1, but man, It Chapter 1 is really, really good.
Fear with the Flash film, though, is that I feel as though it's going to have to connect to something else. So where Matt Reeves was probably given direction like, you can't kill these 5 people, but you can tell whatever story you want. And in that awesome interview, he says, I'm only going to make the movie if I can make it this way, which praise to him. Love that he was honest. And I love that DC said, okay, do it. And they didn't meddle. And it shows they did not get in the way. But when it comes to the Flash film or other like quote unquote DCEU, I guess the Black Adam would be considered DCEU. It has a very CGI vibe, which that's what it's going for. You know what? I'm just in. If it's going to be more cartoonish and out there, that's fine. I'm in. I'm curious how that Flash film will turn out, because if it has to be more connective, then I'm curious with the restraints, you know. I'm hopefully optimistic. I'm excited to see Keaton. I'm curious if Batgirl is going to be like a lighter The Batman, you know, where it's just kind of its own entire thing. It may be a little bit lighter. I can't see it being as dark. I just can't. If it's going to be darker than this, like, he is the Batman. I don't know. Is she going to become Oracle at the end? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so either. I think that's going to be a little bit more of the blockbuster vibe, especially because, I mean, Keaton's in it. They're going to want it to be a bigger thing, because the older folks are going to go out and see that movie. People who grew up on the Keaton Batman movies. But in terms of, I mean, you mentioned the whole connectivity thing. So I've been saying for a while, I don't necessarily need these comic book movies to connect to things. Do you think we've gotten to a point now as an audience as a whole where people need things to connect? I don't know that we're there. I think people are okay with things being standalone. But what do you think?
I would say in terms of Marvel, you almost need everything to connect, because they're now in this situation where you have a multiverse of madness, which does give them some breathing room because you can have pocket realities within the massive reality. But I think for the most part, if you just like really sell the idea that this is a new interpretation on a character, new actors, not connected, and if you're halfway invested, you're going to understand. If you go to this Batman movie and you're like, what happened to Ben Affleck? Then you really like shouldn't be going. I don't know how, like, I don't know a nicer way to say that. You don't have to do nearly as much research as we do, but like, it doesn't take a genius to figure out this is probably a different kind of film, you know? Like, I hope you don't buy these tickets and you're like, well, what happened to Batfleck? Where's Henry Cavill? Like, I don't think we're there, but I think people are more open to the idea. And if this movie succeeds, which I pray and hope that it does financially, you know, obviously great ratings, but this will open the door for awesome new, like, give us a great standalone superhero film based on one of his many phenomenal comics. You know, I don't need him to be connected with everything. Have one Superman movie super outlandish, and one like super grounded, pun intended, because the man can fly. But like you can really experiment, and if this is as successful as I expect it to be, I think it's just going to blow the gates open for what DC can do, and it's going to show that like people just want to see their characters and the stories that they love on screen.
I'm not kidding. I think Warner Brothers should throw $500 million as a paycheck to Steven Spielberg to direct a Superman movie. Just throwing it out there. I really do. I think it'd be the highest grossing Superman movie of all time, easily.
Cover the cost of 500 mil.
I don't care. Don't care. Not my studio. Not my problem.
Money. You're right. Not your money. I love it. Very good.
I just want them to make him an offer he can't refuse and get him to direct that movie, because Steven Spielberg can do that type of film. Anyways, Robert Pattinson. If you're a cinephile, a movie fan, someone who has been keeping their eye on Robert Pattinson and the interesting projects he's been doing ever since Twilight, you probably knew he was going to be fine in The Batman. When I watched him in The Lighthouse 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now rather, oof, time's flying, I knew we're in for a treat. But this is a very different Batman. Before I give my thoughts on this version of the Batman / Bruce Wayne, because admittedly, I'm still a little up in the air in terms of this interpretation of Bruce Wayne specifically, and I'm working through my thoughts, and I know what lane my mind is going down with it, but I would love to see it another time just to solidify, or, I mean, seeing future films to see what he winds up being like might change this a little bit. But I want to hear your thoughts on this Batman / Bruce Wayne.
I don't think we have a Bruce Wayne in this film at all. I think it's just Batman through and through. I think Bruce Wayne died when his parents died. He really held on to that. This is he said he was inspired by Kurt Cobain, and it really shows in terms of his hairstyle, which I just connected before we started this pod, that his hair is very similar to the way Kurt would lay his, and like he combs it whatever when he goes out to the funeral. But when he takes his mask off and it's messy, like it looks like Kurt right after a show. Like it's spot on. But I wrote down here another connection to Watchmen here. You saw Watchmen, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember when Rorschach gets arrested and they take off his mask and he has a really powerful moment where he goes nuts and he's like, "Don't take my face, not my face." I feel as though that is Arbats when he takes off his cowl. Bruce Wayne is just like a figment, an idea. He is the Batman. He doesn't want to talk to people. He doesn't care to put on a show. And I was pretty surprised when he goes to the funeral and he is like clearly dour and just gets in people's faces and he just says what he wants. And he looks pissed. He doesn't look, he's not putting on, which was still a great performance. In Nolan's Batman films where he was the drunk playboy, like I thought he did a really good job of being silly. And then like when he turned the corner, he got a straight face, very American Psycho. That's why he got the job in the first place. But this is an interpretation. I've said it before. I'll keep saying it throughout the pod. I have never seen this in comic, TV, video games, movies ever, to just wear one style the entire time. And you don't care what other people think. And you could tell that really bothers Alfred, right? He's a year 2 Batman. It's kind of like you want to make a jump shot. You got to take 100,000, 10,000 hours, right? Of something. Practice makes perfect. He is consumed by this. He says in the beginning, he's nocturnal, sleeps in the day, lets his company go to shit, doesn't care at all. He just wants to have that Batman stuff working. And everything he has looks like he built it, right? We're going to get into the Batmobile in a little bit. But his suit, at first I was a little hesitant with the look, especially when the cape was off and we get that first set photo. But in the night, the way it just looks like he's been fighting. He has the bullets. He doesn't care, right? It's more of a fear thing than it is like it has to look great. It's movable. It's awesome. I just can't, I'm just really excited talking about it. But I thought it was very interesting that the way he went about it was just, I'm going to be dour the whole time. And if you could see a hint of fear when the Riddler starts to riff on the Batman. And
a hint.
Well,
he's terrified,
but he does a good job of sitting on it. Like you could see that he's showing emotion, and I believe he only smiles once in the whole film. I think he only half grins once.
When
he makes a joke when Alfred's like, he's like, "What are you, a Wayne?" And he does a half smile, and he's like, "Your father gave me these, whatever," and then he's like, sad face again, terrible accent. But I thought this interpretation was very interesting, and I think it's going to allow for the most growth. Appetite Avatar, we were talking in the car. He made a good point that probably the next film he's going to learn how to be Bruce Wayne. And if that can be shown, I think that's great, because then you could get some phantasm stuff where maybe he falls in love or he experiences happiness and he's like, I don't deserve this. I'm supposed to be this character, you know? So I was very, very intrigued and pleasantly surprised with this whole entire performance. What about you?
So I'm going to be lay it all out, totally honest. For the first 2/3 of this movie, which I think are actually, from a film perspective, the first 2 acts are the strongest portion of this film, in my opinion. The first 2 acts, I thought to myself, ooh, I don't know if I like this Bruce Wayne as a person. I don't know if I like this Batman as a person. I'm not connecting with him. Oh no, this movie's so good, but
You mean as a person, real quick?
Yeah. So I'll explain it by explaining some spoilers, kind of, for, in my opinion, the greatest Batman movie ever made. Batman Mask of the Phantasm explores Bruce Wayne, the human being, better than anything I've seen outside of the comic Batman Ego. Batman Ego also does an amazing job. But I don't think they've really explored that in a visual medium yet. A video medium, I should say. Batman, or Bruce Wayne, in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, he's shown from his younger days of starting to crime fight, leading up to finally donning the cape and cowl for the first time, and then later on in his career afterwards with flashbacks. You get to explore the side of him that actually doesn't want to do this, that actually does want to find happiness and wants to be a normal person and find love, get married, have a family, continue his father's actual legacy, but is burdened by the Batman thing. And he feels like he has to do it for his family. And being able to explore that, and I've always said that my favorite scene in any Batman movie ever, is the scene in which Bruce Wayne is crying at his parents' grave. I think it's so powerful. It's the best exploration of that character that I've seen. In this movie, we didn't really get to know Bruce the guy. And that's the first time we've ever had this happen. Majority of the movie, he's in the suit. Shout out to Pattinson for wanting to do that. That must not have been easy. So shout out him. And it's cool.
Those look fairly comfortable, though.
More comfortable than previous ones.
It looks
sure.
very mobile. Tactical. That's a good word.
Our favorite suit, the Affleck suit, looks like it sucks to move around in. This one, it has a lot of pivoting portions to it, so it looks like you can move. So, before I continue, does that make sense in terms of me not connecting to the guy or liking the guy? Because we didn't get a chance, or I didn't feel as though up until the end of the second act, I should say, that I had something to kind of connect with him. Does that make sense now?
Yes. Great explanation. Keep going.
But then the film crescendos and we get the finale. And we get that monologue. And I don't have it written down. I wish I did. And that monologue saved this Bruce Wayne for me. Because he's, as a Batman, awesome. Awesome, of course. Very different, though, still. And we can talk about that in a second. But I wasn't connecting with that Bruce Wayne because, like you said, Bruce Wayne doesn't exist in this movie. I've always loved the idea, and I believe Jeremy John said this in his review of this film. I have always loved the idea of there being 3 versions of Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne when he's out in public, acting like the Chris Nolan Bruce Wayne does. The Nolan Batman movies kind of do this. The Batman personality when he's out in the city, and that doesn't even feel like a person. It kind of just feels like an entity or like a spirit. The way he moves, he doesn't emote. He just kind of seems like an it.
He reminds me a lot of the Terminator.
Yeah, like
especially in this film.
Yeah, like not an organic being. He's just kind of like you're just a
Synthezoid.
Yeah, Synthezoid. Sure. And then there's Bruce Wayne around Alfred, Robin, Catwoman once they're dating, Superman, whoever, and that's who Bruce Wayne actually is. In this movie, Batman is who he actually is. They're actually doing it. They're doing the thing that people thought the Nolan movies did. No, they did not. This movie does it. But Bruce Wayne is a jerk to Alfred.
Giant piece of shit.
He says, "You're not my dad." Yes, he is your dad, dude. Are you kidding? Oh my God. I was flabbergasted, and I thought Alfred was going to die. Did you?
Okay, you weren't in the car with us. But like for 2 seconds, I was like, wait, Warner Brothers okayed that they could just kill Alfred first movie with a top tier actor? Like, this is why I'm happy he's not dead, and I want to see more. I want to see more lineage. I want to see more growth, obviously. But if they killed him, I would have, and if it paid off, obviously, if it all paid off, I would have been through the roof, just flabbergasted. I thought that was great. That whole scene was great because it shows that Batman is not like invulnerable, even though he walks around and gets shot a lot in this movie. And we'll talk about it. But the people around him, the 2 or 3 that he does care about, are still vulnerable. So it's bigger than him. No matter what hero you are, it's always bigger than you, right? Even if you think you're alone, you're not. You inevitably have 1 or 2 people that are close.
And I needed that scene of him at the hospital with Alfred, by the way. I really needed it. Because once that happened, when he says, "I'm not afraid to die," which I was like, yes, Batman shouldn't be afraid to die. The Affleck Batman is apparently afraid to die, which I found pretty interesting, but that's besides the point. He said, "I'm not afraid to die, but I still have that." He said something along the lines of, "I still have that same fear in me from when I was a child that I thought I got rid of, but it's about feeling that way again and losing someone I care about." And then he holds Alfred's hand, and I was like, "Oh, thank you. Thank God. Thank God he's a person still." Because and this is just my opinion, I want to get your take on it. If there is no person there behind Bruce Wayne, doesn't Batman get less interesting as a possibility?
Yeah, it dehumanizes. You have to humanize him. The best part to me of Batman is that he's conflicted, and he is this. I think you and I may look at him a little bit different. I think that the Bat persona, from my understanding, is like his true self, And then when he's around people, like I do like that 3 versions. I like that. That is a good way to look at it, because even as a human, you're different around other people. But I think he's most comfortable. That's why that Rorschach really stood out to me. Like, he's most comfortable under the cowl, right? And when Catwoman and their tension, they remind me of a couple that it's like, they shouldn't be together at all, but they're just gonna have like a romping time, and they're gonna have a great few years, probably have a kid or 2, have like the wildest divorce, but then they're gonna do like adult makeup stuff, and it's gonna be crazy passionate. But anyway, he is like on his toes when he's around her, because no one has ever stepped to him that way. And I love to see how uncomfortable he was every time she was near. But side note, I absolutely detested that she drank the milk in the fridge after the fridge was open for God knows how long. And I audibly said in the theater, "Don't drink that milk." And she did.
It was open?
Complete side note, that fridge was open for, I'm going to say, at least an hour plus. And then she drank the milk.
Oh, God. That's disgusting.
One of 2 gripes that I have with the film. That is huge. You cannot drink milk when the fridge is open for an hour. Everything is not good anymore.
So I've been kind of working on a video essay about this movie, and I think it kind of centers on the Bruce Wayne character. So I'm gonna finish my thoughts on Bruce Wayne there, and say that, just mine at least. Originally, that was a flaw of the movie for me. That was my biggest flaw of it. But by the end, my worries were kind of eased with how the character ends up. So that's all I have to say. Do you have anything else to add about Bruce Wayne / Batman? Actually, let's talk about Batman. Are you done talking about Bruce Wayne?
Yeah.
Okay. Batman in this movie feels like a guy, and I love that. You said he seems a tad scared. To me, he seems flat out terrified at times.
When he
now,
has
are
to
you saying
fly,
terrified like when he fights people, or terrified like around Catwoman?
Not when he fights people. When he fights people, he is comfortable. It's like you said. He's like, I'm living.
I think he seeks it out.
I think he's uncomfortable when people figure him out. That's number one. He's terrified of heights, clearly.
I love that scene, but continue.
Amazing. And he's terrified when he thinks people are smarter than him. I think those three are the... And Robert Pattinson is acting his butt off with just his eyes. This movie made me go, I don't think we should ever get the white eyes in a movie. Because you get so much from an actor's eyes.
Only way it would work is if they Spider-Manned it and they had like dots around and you could enlarge and lessen, But with his black eyes and his very blue eyes, they contrast each other so well that you can tell when he is shocked and surprised and when he's cool and collected.
Mm-hmm. This Batman also stumbles a lot. Like, he's falling on his butt a lot. That man must get massages every week to deal with those muscle aches, brother. He, at the end, and we can talk about this in terms of like speculation or whatever if you wanted, he injects something. I'm assuming it's not Bane venom. I'm assuming it's adrenaline, straight up, like just hospital grade adrenaline.
Fiction style, just to the heart.
Yeah. To get himself going after getting hit with shotgun pellets. I loved it. Jeremy Johns, we've mentioned him on the podcast before. I love his reviews. He said that this Batman didn't feel as mythical as some Batmans in the past. Did you have a problem with this? I should ask you, do you believe this Batman feels more like a guy, and do you have a problem with it?
So I would say in the beginning of the movie, he felt more like a symbol. And as the movie progressed, he became more humanistic. In the start of the movie, people are scared of shadows. Like, it feels as though it's year 10. The boots, dude, he sounds like the Terminator when he's walking into the room. Like, I just kept thinking about that. It's like he purposely put spurs in his heels in order for people to hear,
He's like a cowboy. It's amazing.
And it reminds me of the end of the Arkham series. If you haven't played that, spoiler, Batman dies, but the very end, it goes to how he's a symbol, and it's bigger than just being a person, and the fear of the night and the fear of the shadow and the fear of doing wrong at night, and people's heightened sense that even though we know it was a man, he's still, and that symbol is still so scary that I hesitate to commit that crime, right? I love that they had several shots where it's people doing something wrong, and then they show the light in the sky, and then they look to a shadow, and then the one guy gets hit by a car because he's so caught off guard. One dude just runs because he thinks he's there. It almost makes him feel like a year 10 Batman. And then as the movie continues, you realize he's brand new to all of this. And I think they did it really well. One of my favorite scenes is when he has to jump off of the building because he's never done it before. It's like he has that cowl either for aesthetics because it looks scary. I assume it's like fire retardant. So if somebody hits him on fire, he can just cover himself.
One would hope.
But like the Nolan films and stuff, he glides, he's comfortable. He specifically gets a suit for spelunking, to take a tumble. He is not ready. And I love that it's a wingsuit. He has to hit 2 buttons to get everything covered because realistically it wouldn't just work. And he's like, well, I have to do this or I'm screwed. And then he gets hurt. I will say, I kind of wish it was a little more realistic because honestly, you'd have a broken neck. There's no way you get up from that. But I did love how everything was so grounded. His gadgets. I loved his secret grappling hook, the way it was in his wrist. And, it was very similar to Django Unchained, where Django kills DiCaprio at the end. Do you remember that? He has the wrist gun from Christoph Waltz. I thought it was awesome. And I love that his belt is clunky. The guy has a utility belt for a reason. Make it look like he has stuff on it. I like that it's different shapes and sizes, and it's clearly has a variety of different things that he can use. He has the shockers in his wrist, which is why he has the lines on his forearms, I guess. So I guess it's like where the current goes through. And like when he shocks the one guy, I'm just going off here, but I'm very excited we didn't get to talk. When he gets shot in the beginning, and he gets shot like right at the beginning of the film, when he shocks that guy, he holds it to me longer than he's supposed to because he's pissed that the guy thought to shoot him. And when he watches it back in his eye camera, which is my favorite piece of back tech that they ever introduced, he's psychoanalyzing and taking notes like, may have to tamper down a bit or whatever, like can't cross that line. But to wrap this all up, my favorite piece of bat tech, minus the car, I thought the eye stuff was ingenious, and I thought it Now looking back at every other Batman film, I don't know how he has not used anything like that before, because so many nights of being Cape Crusader, if you're not taking notes or like writing in a Google form, I don't know how you're remembering this stuff. And I thought that was just so smart. And it reminds me a lot of the Arkham games where you have detective mode, but it pays off to why he stares at things longer. Not only is he foreboding and he's fearful and he's imposing fear, but he's also taking mental and digital images of everything. You know, that whole crime scene, like, we really got to go. He has to take that extra look. I loved what they did with his bad tech stuff.
And I mean, maybe people wouldn't agree with me on this. I love that he writes in a physical journal and doesn't enter things in on a computer. He has a computer and a monitor to study stuff, but he's writing down personal stuff on there. You can't put that on something that can get hacked. You need that in a physical thing that can be destroyed. If he was ever compromised, he could burn the journals. You can delete stuff on your computer, but is it ever, like, you know, it's possible that, like, the Riddler was smart enough to, I mean, he was on the dark web. He probably could have hacked into the Batcave. Who knows? Side note, I like the Batcave in this. I love that it's like a railroad thing. I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Well, Reeves said in that interview it was inspired by those secret tunnels that the Rockefellers probably had in New York. And I thought that was genius. You know, it makes sense. It works. Only he would have access. But those journals also had me really think. I still go with my vibe of this is just a masked man who wants to fight, get his energy out, whatever. But he is like one, and I guess he always has been, but this movie really puts it in perspective. He's one bad day from being the Riddler. He's one bad day from being like the Joker. And I know that this has been done before, and it's even in The Killing Joke. Like, you're one bad day away from being me. But I think this movie really captures it because, like, that's psychopath shit to take meticulous, detailed, thought-provoking notes, to psychoanalyze everything you're doing. I thought they just did a very good job of making me almost uneasy supporting this guy in his revenge pursuit. I loved it.
Quick minute on the Batmobile in this movie.
You can start.
I think this is top 3 Batmobile ever. I think it is, in terms of like one that you could see in the real world, the most realistic in my opinion. Yeah, a little more realistic than the Tumbler because it just looks like a muscle car with like a rocket ship on the back of it. That's
the one that like a person could build if they wanted it. You would have to get a Tumbler type vehicle from the army.
Mm-hmm. My Batmobile rankings have changed since the last time we spoke about this. I'm going the Michael Keaton Batmobile number 1, Tumbler number 2, just because the Keaton Batmobile feels like a Batmobile, like really feels like one. It reminds me of the limousine-looking one from the animated series, which I absolutely adore.
And then K-turn in that.
No, you can't make a regular turn in that.
Sorry, no U-turns. No U-turns. Definitely K-turns. No U-turns.
No. It's like a 47-point turn to try and turn that thing around. And then the Pattinson Batmobile number 3. That car chase is incredible. The camera work in that is like, it's like Matt Reeves. I mean, we talked about Marissa Tomei putting up 40 points off the bench. This is Matt Reeves from the rafters, just chucking threes. It's amazing. I love the Batmobile. Go ahead.
I love that it stalled. He revved it so much it shut off. Clearly, he has not fixed all the exhausts or whatever. I thought it was awesome. And that chase, man, the way the cameras are set, the visual effects at the end where he's walking through the fire, and that's like a 5-6 minute like scene. There's almost like a beginning, middle, end to that car chase. It's done so well. And you've really said everything that I thought about it. I thought it's a beautiful looking car. I can't honestly remember my rankings for all the Batmobiles in our Batman pod there, but this is definitely up there. And I really, again, I love that it stalled out. And the first time he revved it up, it was so powerful that the car physically couldn't handle the engine. He had to give it a second. It messed up his whole pursuit. And then he had to like redo it all. I loved it.
Let's talk about the Riddler. I did not expect I knew he was going to be creepy and scary. That opening scene, my goodness. Terrifying.
Yeah. And he gives mouth breathers a bad name.
Is Paul Dano, I mean, he's obviously in the pantheon. is he the greatest at playing a weird guy ever in the history of movies? I think there's a conversation to be had that he is.
That's weird guy. He's such
like ever.
an actor that seems always underutilized. I heard somewhere that this is his first blockbuster film ever.
Prisoners wasn't a blockbuster film, no. There Will Be Blood, no. Well, you might be right. Oh my gosh.
Definitely makes artsy, great films, but he's never made like a blockbuster.
Wow. I didn't expect him to have his mask off, really, or us to see his face as much as we did towards the end. He's really going for it in that jail scene, more so than I thought. In terms of the scene where he's talking to Batman, I didn't think he'd be that outlandish and that nuts, for lack of a better term. But when he has that mask on, that's one of the scariest Batman movie villains I've ever seen. Like, he's the one who, if I saw... when I say that, he's one of the ones, if I saw, I think I would actually defecate in my pants. Like, I would just lose it. Like, oh, I'm dead. Poo. Okay. What am I going to do? All right, I'm dead, and I'm defecating.
I crap my pants. How do you saw that one?
Yeah.
What's brown all over? My pants. Now, KG, what were your thoughts on the Riddler?
What a riddle there.
Yeah.
I personally loved it. I don't know. I know in the video games he's more cartoonish and you kind of just solve puzzles and he harms people, kills people, whatever. And Jim Carrey had his very unique, outlandish take. I haven't really read many comic books where Riddler's the key villain, but I really liked it. As grounded as they made the film, they made him just a straight up serial killer, right? He has a target. He has his weird way of going about it. He has his he uses a code. He's a great mashup again between Zodiac and Seven. And I know that Reeves has said he's pulled from it, but I can really see it. He has the Zodiac style look and feel with the codex. His apartment looks eerily like the guy from Seven. And I'm not going to spoil that for you. Because again, that's your homework. You got to see it. But I think he does and they do a really good job of touching on scary real life events where people can get a following, right? He's attacking who? He's attacking the rich, right? Everybody hates the rich. He's methodical about who he's attacking and why. He's putting on a show. He's showing people what's going on. And if you look at it, it's fairly similar to Nolan's Joker, where he's also just kind of like aimlessly running around and doing things. But where Joker is causing chaos to cause chaos and there's a secret message there, I feel like the Riddler has a true vendetta and he's clearly off. Something is wrong, but he has an end game. And I am curious to see how he will be. I'm very happy he's not dead, number one. Good job not killing your villain. But I am curious how he will play out in later films. And I would love to see if this is Galaxy Brain. Batman has a new enemy. Maybe it's Joker or Counterman or something else. And I would like if he goes back to Riddler for advice and Riddler feels a little more calm now in Arkham. Like maybe he's sedated or he's just kind of collected himself and maybe matured because he can't go out and he has to answer through riddles. I feel like he could be a very utilized character in future films.
That's actually a really good idea. I would love that. That'd be awesome. Do you like that Batman and Riddler never touch in this movie? They never physically touch each other, ever. And they only have one conversation. Do you like that happens?
Yeah, because Batman would break him in half. A lot of Batman's villains are more mental than anything. I know that in the Kids WB cartoon, I think it was also called The Batman. Their play on Joker was he was kind of physical agile, and he was okay. But I always liked that the Joker knew, you can break my legs, put me in a wheelchair, do whatever, but I know you're not going to kill me, so I'm going to do what I want. And then you're going to have to pick up the pieces. And I love that the Riddler kind of says that in this film. We did this together, bud. I laid the groundwork. You brought out who I needed, and I was able to get done what I needed because of you. And he almost says the whole Joker, you completely thing. There are a little, it's inevitable that you're going to have parallels and connections between the films and the vibes. But I like that they're constantly separate. And when he gets caught, it's clearly there's a reason he's getting caught. But I like how it does start to unfold and that there is the barrier and he wants to punch through it, but he can't. And there's no way that he can get to him, I thought that was done really well. And if he was able to touch him, it would take the suspense out of it. Because that Riddler can't hold his own.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think that at the end of the movie
when he's punching that Riddler
henchman, essentially. I
I
wonder
if in the back in canon, of course. I wonder if in the back of his mind he's like,
no,
you're the Riddler, and I'm
wailing
on you because of him.
I thought at the end of the movie he was going to say, I am Riddler, but then he said, I am vengeance to mock him. And I thought that was smart because it definitely caught me off guard. It would have been easy to say, like, we are Riddler. But I thought that was cool that he said he was vengeance.
Yeah, that was good. Also, this rain trap on the head, a lot of commitment. That must have been really warm. Jeez Louise.
As somebody who's got a fairly long head of hair. What are we doing?
And Paul Dano's got a head of hair on him, so that must have not been comfortable.
I'm just happy it wasn't duct tape. That's self-mutilation no one needs to go through.
Yeah, seriously. Let's talk about some more of these characters. I mentioned the Mad Max Fury Road film a little while ago, earlier on in the pod. To me, much like in that movie, Furiosa is the star of the movie, even though it's a Mad Max film. I think Catwoman is the star of this movie. She kind of brings the charisma and kind of gravitas and star feeling that Bruce Wayne doesn't bring in this film. She kind of picks up that slack. And I'll say this, dude. I think without her in it, without Zoe, her last name's Kravitz, right? Zoë Kravitz.
Yeah, Zoë Kravitz.
Without Zoe Kravitz in this film, it is not as good as it is, in my opinion.
They play off of each other like fantastic. The chemistry, scientists couldn't make that in a lab. That's how good it is. But they definitely play off each other. And without her kind of countering his brutism and brutality, it would be like drowned in saturation, you know?
Yeah. I think I don't want to do the whole comparison thing with other Catwomen. I just think she's one of the great co-stars in a Batman movie ever. I just think she's up there. Because of that chemistry, because she carries herself like a star in the movie, right? When she's on camera, when she's walking down those hallways in that was it Club 44 was the club beneath the club?
Yeah, what a name. I think it's below 44 to be like.
Sorry, below 44.
Yeah. The club within the club.
I never got that until you just said that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I mean, ideally it should have been below 32, but I guess below 44 sounds better.
Yeah.
Notes for next time, Reeves. Jeez.
When she's walking down that hallway, you can't take your eyes off the screen. She's magnetic. Zoe Kravitz, an absolute star. I can't wait to see her in more movies. I would love to see her do a rom-com, as you drafted her for.
She'd be 12 out of 10 fantastic in it. But I think I would agree with you. She holds her own. She challenges Batman really like just aggressively. And I like that she is so like vivacious on screen. Like we are all as intimidated as Batman is. We just don't have a mask to hide our face when she approaches him. We understand our bats. It's a lot to handle. But she also does a great job in her fight scenes. I like that she's very agile. She can get like her high kicks up there. Like they have a different fighting style, and I like that it's shown. She's more flexible, where he's more like brutal, and it plays off of each other well. And I like that at the end, she's not following his rules. I think she's starting to come around to like his idea, but she wants to kill Falcone, right? And that's a very in-depth story, but she's using that gun for a purpose. And it's not till Batman takes it out of her hand, I think almost twice, because she has the gun when she captures the henchman, and then she has the gun again when she goes to kill Falcone. But like she understands what he's doing, and I think as the movies go on, she'll kind of like start to agree, but it like in challenging ways. Like, then get the gun out of my hand, and now you have to grab me, and now we have to look at each other for upwards of 5 to 10 seconds, and now it's gonna get all steamy and weird.
Yeah, I really, really don't want her to be gone forever. I need her back in these films.
Penguin, one of my favorite parts of this movie.
I was gonna say sneaky favorite of the whole movie.
Yeah,
I think he is my favorite of the entire film.
Pound for pound, best performance in my opinion.
Literally, because he's massive.
Colin, yeah. Yeah, you popped me on that one. I didn't see that one coming. Colin Farrell is doing the Marissa Tomei thing. I'm just coming in and I'm just bodying everything I'm doing.
I feel as though when he was a younger actor, his movies were like and he was like okay. And as he's gotten older, it's either like high concept indie TV shows that 6 people watch, but he's really good. Or this.
And this, I mean, if they do I know they're doing a Penguin show, which I'm all in on.
Now I'm jacked up. Before with all these shows, I was like, I don't really care. But now I am enthralled to see how the GCPD works and the side detective stories they can tell. And I can't wait for that Penguin show.
That Penguin show is now one of my most anticipated shows of whatever year that comes out ever. He feels like Goodfellas. If you take Robert De Niro in that movie, but you give him Joe Pesci's personality, that's kind of what he is.
I'm gonna say if Joe Pesci was a little taller.
Yeah.
And he's so good. I cannot wait for him, and I want to see more of his interaction with the Batman. I want him in a future Batman movie.
Well, I like how at the end it shows that he is now thinking of something, and he's gonna be like in charge of that underworld. And I love that in the beginning he just invites him in. He's like, "You looking for me? Come on in." His line delivery is amazing. Part of the reason I want to rewatch the film, if I'm being completely honest, I just want to hear all of his lines again. When he yells at them because of the Spanish, I was dying.
It's so funny. Okay, just quick tangent. People I checked some of the negative Rotten Tomatoes reviews, the negative ones. Some people said that this movie's too bleak. I found it to be quite funny at times. When Batman says, "Do you know who I am?" at the club, when he's in the Batman attire, that's hilarious. That's like objectively funny. Batman going, he's at the door of a club going, do you know me? But it's almost like, do you know me?
And then they close the door.
Yeah, but it's more so like, if you know me, you'll let me in right now. So good. Gordon, straight up out of a 70s cop movie. Amazing. Loved him. Thoughts?
He is the most divorced police officer ever. He is never home. He has 3 children that he definitely loves but never sees. I loved every second. I've never seen a more stressed man in my life.
Oh my gosh. 100% agree. I think he's great. I want to see more of Alfred in future films. Just a quick little thing on Alfred.
Because I don't necessarily...
Did you notice
Go ahead.
that Alfred is the one who taught him how to fight?
I love that. I'm into it.
So if they're not using League of Shadows, which is fine with me, I want to get the lineage of like Alfred's backstory. I know he was at MI6, like he has his own. There's even a show now that like Stars produces or whatever. But I want to see how they can incorporate that into the films, and maybe one of Alfred's villains from the past or something is trying to catch up. But I thought that was a very subtle, like I can teach you how to fight, but I can't be your father, whatever. That like opens a whole world of, well, what have you two done together type deals.
I agree. The first time I ever saw that was in Beware the Batman, which was the last serious Batman cartoon they tried to put out, but it got canceled after one season. And that Alfred was the same way. He was even younger than this Alfred, though. And I remember being like, well, this is interesting. I had never seen that before. And ever since then, I had read up on some of the stuff where Alfred is like that. And I think it's really cool. I'm cool with not getting Ra's al Ghul. You don't want to redo the things that they did in the Nolan trilogy.
And that League of Shadows, honestly, for as grounded as the Nolan's films were, I don't think it would work here. Like ninjas wouldn't make sense.
No. Let's see. I only have one. I have 2 final points, 1 point and 1 question. I guess we'll end off on the question. And I'll ask it now, and you'll think about it before we end off the pod on it. How's that sound?
Fair.
The question is this movie rewatchable?
That was actually my question for you.
Good.
I swear to God, that was my question for you.
We'll talk about that in like 5 minutes or a couple minutes. For me, the third act, I mentioned it before. The third act is when I started to feel the runtime of this movie. That's when you start to get like, oh, this movie's over 2.5 hours long. Wow. Okay. We've been here a while. This movie does not stop once. I told you when we got out of the theater, I had to use the restroom from the time the movie started. And I had gone before the movie started, but I knew for a fact I drank too much water throughout the day. I was like, I'm screwed. I'm going to have to go again. And I was good the first 2 acts, but I kept thinking to myself, wait, the movie, why hasn't, because I'm usually good at like sussing out when is a good time to go to the bathroom in a movie. Usually it's sometime within the second act. It's like the transition from the first to second act. I was like, oh, this hasn't stopped. Oh no. You can't leave. You can't leave the theater once. You have to absorb everything. Did you feel the runtime, and was the third act a little weak for you in comparison to the first two?
Yes. Everything you said, yes. I would and it kind of upsets me a little bit admitting this because like I loved it. I obviously loved it. But if I'm being completely honest with myself, I thought the third act was too long, personally. I know that Chris Stuckman said it was a 3-hour movie that felt like a 2-hour movie. I want to have an in-depth conversation with him about it because to me, it personally felt sluggish, if I'm being completely honest. And I think part of the reason is because as the movie goes, it's a pretty straightforward detective flick, but there are a lot of like new red lines, Charlie Day style, where they are just connecting out of the main plot. And the issue you run into is that it might be long, but if it's not like consistent, like Zodiac is a long movie. It's a really long movie, but it's one of my favorites because you're just going after the Zodiac killer and it's a story over several years. It makes sense. It doesn't, there's not like new secret messages or whatever you have to, or not messages, but new secret like mysteries you have to find out that don't really relate, but kind of relate. This one, like the whole Wayne thing and the mob and the rat, like I feel like that took a long time. I don't know if it was just me, but that was like super in depth. And at one point I got a little confused with all the names. And I am a Batman guy. And I'm just being honest. I got a little confused with Maroni and Falcone and who was helping who and who's actually the rat. So I will agree with you that the third act, for as much as I did love this film, the third act does drag. And then you have like 3 kind of endings.
Yeah, the multiple endings things. I thought I was the only one who noticed that, but it seems as though that's a complaint for a lot of people. It felt like the movie crescendos, and then it goes, and then it crescendos, and then we're still doing something with Batman and the Catwoman. Yeah, I don't know. It's not bad. It just isn't as good as the first two. The first 2 acts are really, really great stuff, and the final. And I think that might be why some people aren't absolutely loving this movie. I don't think it finishes as strong as it starts.
If I'm being even more honest, I struggle to remember where the third act starts because I thought that the third act started earlier than I thought. And when like second act part 2 ends, that's when the third act starts. And I was like, oh, we have like at least another 20 minutes. Like I was definitely wrong. I over predicted when it was like starting to end. You know what I mean?
To me, I believe the third act starts once Catwoman kicks the guy off the roof.
And that's after they capture Riddler, right?
No, that's right before. Because then they go to the club.
Get Riddler really late.
Yeah, dude, that Riddler scene is late. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The pacing in this movie is so different. It's so different. Again, Jeremy Johns, I believe it was him. He said it kind of feels like a show, not a movie.
And it's kind of because you
mini series-esque. I can see that.
Yes,
because the acts kind of bleed into each other, and you kind of lose track of time. And this movie only takes place within like a week's time. I had no idea. I was like, oh, this is like a couple days. It was like Halloween night until like November 5th. Or 6th or 7th, yeah. But yeah. So, bouncing off that, before we get into the last question, do you have any other thoughts or anything else that you wanted to touch on before we go to the last question of the pod?
I believe we touched just about everything. The only thing I was going to mention was the score. I thought the score was fantastic. I thought the use of Something in the Way as the only recognizable song with different iterations between the beginning and the end. I think in the end they had more strings to it. I loved it. I loved his theme, but if I thought about it a lot, I still think the Dark Knight's theme by Hans Zimmer is in my themes of all time still probably my number 1. It's something about the buildups to the come downs in his themes. It's like I would say my second favorite is actually Zack Snyder's Superman theme. I used to work out to that. Like it is exhilarating.
That's my wake up alarm.
It is a great wake up. It is fantastic. And again, Hans Zimmer did it. But I think the score, the way they went with it, the way how they just use like his theme just differently for different things. If he's being sneaky, if he's being brutal, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was genius. I loved the score. This is a score I don't really look up many, but I would definitely look this up, listen to it as I'm doing work or whatever. It's a somewhat calming yet like I'm ready to go type of score. But that's probably the last thing I want to mention before the end. Any thoughts on the score?
I listened to it yesterday. It's really good. I don't know. I personally like Danny Elfman's score the best from Batman '89. I think that score is like legendary. But I still love the Hans Zimmer stuff. I heard recently that Hans Zimmer's never won an Oscar, which I find
he might win this year, and they're not going to televise it.
That's disgusting. But I don't want to get into a tangent about that. That really pisses me off.
That could come in our April pod, possibly.
Yeah, because the Oscars are fumbling the bag in terms of what they're showing. Seriously. Anyways, so the question, is this movie rewatchable? To me, would you like me to answer first?
Oh, yes.
To me, I feel, I can only speak for myself in this regards because I think some people might not think this movie is rewatchable. But to me, I think that this movie might require multiple viewings to really appreciate it. I think, KG, that this movie is going to age like a fine wine. I think people who only like this movie, much like myself after leaving the theater, I liked it. I even told Appetite Avatar, I said, I think, my prediction for the podcast, if you're listening, App, here's to you. My prediction is KG will have loved this movie and I will have liked it. And that was on Thursday, or Friday morning. And then last night, I was like, oh, I think I really liked it. And now I'm teetering on loving it. But I have to watch it more to really cement where I'm at. That's my opinion. What do you think?
When I left the theater, I would say I really liked. And I almost left with some disappointment because I wanted to Spider-Man love it. And I did some pseudo self-reflection. And I was like, are you really like a big Batman fan? Have you transitioned to become more of a Marvel fan than DC? Is Batman now kind of falling off? But then I thought about it, and I thought about it during my workout today, and I was like, no, I freaking love this movie. And the reason why I love it is because it's why I love Zodiac, and it's why I love Seven. It is not a movie I'm going to rewatch a lot. And it's not a movie that I can rewatch the next day like I did for Spider-Man. I'll never forget. We had some type of snow day deal. I was like, all right, I'll just explore if I can find a ticket. Got a midday showing, just as exhilarating. But I can't wait for like another week when I go with my girlfriend and I watch it again. And I study it and analyze it. And then I get her reaction to it. And then we can banter on what I saw the first and second time versus what she saw the first time. And I couldn't agree more with you. I think as the movie ages, it's going to be recognized as probably one of the best cinematic. It's definitely going to compete with Dark Knight as like the definitive Batman film. But I think there's so much in the movie that on first watch, you're not going to like get it all. I was just so blown away, not blown as an upset, but like so blown away that it was like so detective-y that I don't even think I appreciated the ins and outs of his detective work, some of the dialogue scenes, the action scenes. I definitely have to rewatch this. But the more I stew with it, it reminds me, I said it a bunch, I'll keep saying it, Seven and Zodiac, two of my all-time favorite thrillers. Do I watch them all the time? No. It would be kind of weird if I did. They're like wildly depressing, pretty grotesque, but they are a tour de force in terms of cinema. And I can't recommend those films enough to people because it challenges you. It makes you think. You sit on it when the movie's over. You have that inner dialogue. Did I like it? Not really. Oh my God, I think I loved it. So I can't wait to see it again, but it is not a movie that I can like turn off and then in 20 minutes go watch it again. You know, like there's no way I could have watched it the next day. There's no way. I almost think I might have enjoyed it less because I didn't give myself time to marinate on it. And I would have been forcing myself to go watch this where I'm still conflicted about how I feel. Now, I might sound crazy to people because I look at movies way too in depth, where some people are like, yo, it's just a film, relax. But I think it's a phenomenal question because there's certain superhero movies like Spider-Man No Way Home. I think that's instantly rewatchable. I did it. I literally did it. It is instantly rewatchable. But I noticed a good amount of these DC films. Joker, I would not put that on again right away when I finished. But rewatching it, especially for a pod, it was a thrill. I couldn't wait to finish it. And not because it was bad, but because I want to talk about, all right, on the second time I noticed all this is what the director was doing. They're just different kinds of films, you know? It really stands alone in what it was trying to do.
There's 4 DC movies that I think are really rewatchable. Shazam 1. I haven't seen Shazam Fury of the Gods because it hasn't been out yet. Wonder Woman 1. Aquaman, I think, is rewatchable because it's just kind of like an action movie. And I think the Suicide Squad, the second one.
You're saying just DCEU.
DC movies. DC movies post Man of Steel to now, the last 10 years. I don't think Man of Steel's rewatchable. Or that rewatchable. It's really heavy. BVS, definitely not that rewatchable. It's long. It's dark. We know all the stuff.
It's like a once every 4 years type deal.
Zack Snyder's Justice League is 4 hours, fam. It's not that rewatchable. And this movie falls in line with some of those. It's heavy. It's weighty. There's a lot to it. It's a very quiet movie. I mean, how many times did we see Batman just walking through a room and not saying anything, and you're just kind of like this, humana. You're just watching the screen, like, okay.
And it's like really dark. I would say it's literally the darkest Batman film we've ever had.
Yeah.
Over 90% of it's at night, because a lot of it is just Batman in a suit.
Yes, and do you remember that shot from the trailer? You might not have watched that trailer actually, where Batman is looking up at the sky. It's the end. It's a final shot of him after that night at Gotham Square Garden. Good name, by the way.
You think the Knicks are winning there?
In that universe, Gotham is. Probably. Yeah. Well, let's just say yeah.
Julius Randle's being a big old bum there.
When Batman's looking up at the sky in that trailer, I thought to myself, "Wow, that's a really interesting shot. I wonder what happens there." During the third act, I'm like, "We haven't seen that yet." I remembered it because it's so different. It's out in daylight. It's Batman. It's so bright outside, you can see the dirt on his costume, which does not happen often. I think that this movie is something that should be rewatched to really appreciate it, but it might not be an easy one. And I think we both kind of landed on there.
I would agree with that.
KG, any other final thoughts before we sail off into the sunset?
I think we covered this top to bottom, left to right, all over.
Yes, I think so too. This is one of my favorite pods we've done yet, in my opinion. I think this has been great. KG, people heard me say for you to hit our music. Where can people find that music? Because there's more of it, and it's just as good.
On Spotify, Above the Moon, or on Instagram at Above the Moon Music. We're also on Apple Music and anywhere you get music. So please take a second, go check that stuff out if you like it. And if you want to combat me on any of my takes, it's at KGForce346.
And you can find me at youtube.com/Geeks Weekly. That's where you can find my videos. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me at Buffcharmander GW on Instagram. If you'd like to see some art, I will be posting stuff. I'm learning how to draw digitally, and that's where I'll be posting my progression through that. You can interact with me on there. If you want to refute any of my takes like KG has said, you can do so on there. I look forward to seeing you. And if you have listened to this portion of the podcast all the way down here, please do not forget to give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you're listening to, or if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and subscribe to the podcast feed so you don't miss out on future podcasts next month. We don't know what's happening next month. We haven't talked about it. We'll talk about it eventually. We've been just planning on the Batman this whole year. So we've kind of we've done the most anticipated movie of the year, for me at least, probably for you too, KG. And I'm excited to see what the rest of the year brings to us. So once again, thank you all very much for listening. Once again, I have been Buffcharmander, joined as always by KG.
Until next time.
Stay safe and stay sweaty, my friends.